When I saw the manuscript and I saw not only treble clef, bass clef, but I saw alto clef, C clef, things that aren't typically used, I knew, oh, we are looking at something that is going to, you know, this could
Yeah.
take over your life. This could be a 20-year odyssey of getting something
Yes,
performed, but
indeed.
wow, what a journey. And the historian in me was just excited, to
Yeah.
see something in someone's handwriting and to try to unpack all the context and nuances around it,
Yeah.
just to translate the language, to figure out what the plot was, putting aside the musical aspect of it. I knew that what we had was going to be something spectacular. It just was a
Yeah.
question of how do we get to the spectacle part of the spectacular.
Right.
Hello and welcome to the Black Catholic Messenger Show, where we keep it Black and we keep it Catholic. My name is Nate Turner Williams, and I have two special guests with me. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Givonna Joseph, founder and artistic director of OperaCréole here in New Orleans.
And I'm Aria Mason, co-founder and director of production for OperaCréole here in New Orleans. And I'm also her daughter.
Yes, indeed. Two wonderful people from a wonderful city. And I'm so excited to speak to you both today about Opera Creole and a very special project you guys have recently worked on. So, first off, can you tell me a bit about Opera Creole, how it came about, and the kind of work that you guys are doing?
OperaCréole began it came out of initially a series of concerts that my mother and then later I were doing about music by composers of color from the free community here in New Orleans in the 19th century. And in 2010, we were a part of a production of Porgy and Bess here with New Orleans Opera, first mother and daughter to do roles in the same opera with New Orleans Opera. And we started talking and fellowshipping with other Black singers and talking about forming something that was able to put this music forward and also research and develop other productions around more music by composers from the African diaspora. And so we began in 2010 with rehearsals and everything, and we had our inaugural concert in 2011.
What was that concert?
Oh, goodness. Mama, do you want to?
Did you say where or what?
What was the performance of? Yeah.
Oh, it was a combination of things by Edmond Dédé, things by Samuel Snaer. I think we did something from Tosca, the big chorus from Tosca. We did some Creole songs. We did some traditional like Carmen, things like that. And Aria did some zarzuela because of the history of Cuban opera troupes coming to New Orleans to present. And so it was a mixture of things. Yeah.
We also did a scene from La Flamenca by Lucien Lambert, which was one of our productions in 2017.
Yeah.
And it was actually at the old Ursuline convent at St. Mary's Church. So, very significant for New Orleans history and Creole history in particular.
Yeah, one of the composers, Samuel Snaer, was the organist there.
Hmm.
And that church, we hear about the cathedral, but the church, St. Mary's, was actually the seat of the bishop. So it was very impressive.
Well, it was his residence.
Yeah,
It was his residence.
impressive role for a free man of color to have to be the organist there.
Yeah, I think not a lot of people know about how different Louisiana was from many parts of the country in that regard. And
Yes.
of course, that history is still so complex. But how does that interact with the history of opera? Was New Orleans like a center for Black opera?
Yeah, we consider ourselves the first city of opera because we had the first full opera season in 1796. There were a couple of other cities that presented an opera before then, but they didn't have a full season. And so, and then from that point, we became a mecca for French teachers, French composers, people coming from all over the world to perform. We had 5, 6 opera houses over a period of time, sometimes 2 running at the same time. We premiered over 200 operas from Europe in America for the first time.
Not
The
New
same,
York. They had their
not
premieres in New Orleans because they knew that they were guaranteed an audience. They were guaranteed a audience that spoke world languages, and they would have a real sense of how it would go across the American community.
yeah.
And I presume these audiences were integrated?
Yes, in tiers. There was the bottom white section. There was the section for free people. There was the higher section for the enslaved, and there was another little section that had um, some kind of lattice in front of it for expecting mothers, so they
Yes.
could come out but not be seen in public.
Lest you offend with your condition.
Mercy.
Hmm.
Yeah, that tickles me all the time. Yeah,
I
but
remember.
the Reconstruction, it was fully integrated for a little while.
Mm. And you both being from New Orleans, how did you come into the opera scene?
Well, I at 15, I was doing musical theater here at the New Orleans Recreation Department had a big musical theater program, and someone suggested a voice teacher to me, Charles Paddock, and he heard my voice and thought that opera would be a thing for me, or classical music would be a thing for me. And although I did not have any exposure to it other than seeing people on like Mario Lanza and on TV, um, I just I just I said, well, if he believes I can do it, I'm just gonna follow and do it and go from there. So and then my daughter later also did the same musical theater and snuck up on me with the classical
Here she
operetta.
go. Here she go. Okay. See,
Because when
see,
she was
feeling
little, everybody used to say, especially at church, "Are you gonna sing like your mom?" And she said, "I'm so tired of people asking me if I'm gonna sing." So she played the saxophone for a while. And then she got around to singing in musical theater. Next thing I know, she's at Catholic doing classical stuff. So
let's back up just a little bit. Okay. First of all, if you spend 9 months in classical surround sound on stages in people's stomach, singing at mass in people's stomach, what do you think is gonna happen? Then she go and she named me Aria. Okay, that's not a person looking for a forensic dentist as a child. All right, she's willing it into existence. Let's start there. Then, when I was about 7 or 8, I guess other people started noticing I could sing when I couldn't notice I could sing. So people started putting me in choirs. So I started getting put into children's choir, district choir, later all state choir. So I was a choral singer from a very early age.
yeah,
But I did not feel confident initially singing on my own because my mother is such a glorious talent. And then I started doing musical theater when I was about 12 with Ty Tracy at the same director as her at the same theater, North Theater, and just kind of grew in my confidence. And then when I said I wanted to take voice lessons, Miss Ma'am here said, well, if you're going to take voice lessons, you're going to learn classical music. So I'm not sure why this narrative is coming up that it was a shock to her when I decided to major in voice. But I'm just going to go ahead and rebuke that, okay? Because I started cantering at 15, ma'am. So we just going to reject
okay,
that fake news
okay.
all out.
Well,
All
I
I
out.
guess the plan when you first went was not for you to major in voice. So
No, I
that was
was I
that was
was initially going to major in like a pre-law major, and but then I decided I really wanted to also study music, so I was a double major.
yeah.
I see. Yeah, I had a feeling there was an alternate version of
Right.
that story.
Oh boy.
Don't have me out here painted like the surprise singer. You named me Aria. You wanted somebody else, you could have named me Valerie or something. She was gonna name me Aida, And then someone talked her out of it. And
Yeah.
I'm eternally grateful that they did, because that would have
Like
been
Ida B. Wells?
no, Aida, like the opera, Aida.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but we have a long history, and of course I used to drag her to every wedding I was singing for. When I was cantering, she'd be on the altar with me, and by the recessional hymn, she was holding on to my leg. You know, so music has always been in her life.
It's a beautiful thing, music.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially music from with the church. We've both spent, probably, if you combined it, probably about 50, 60 years total together serving the church in one way or another, but mostly through music ministry. So that has always been an integral part of who we are, and also what we brought to the table with Opera Creole. A large part of our concerts have involved sacred music, and trying to pay tribute to Black Catholic tradition in terms of music and celebration as well. And I don't think that can be ignored. Uh, what we know about sacred music and Black music in particular, they go hand in hand. They're walking together. So we've always tried to honor that and uplift that as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I would think most people when they think of Black sacred music, they think of probably gospel music and probably a certain kind of gospel music. But I feel like your work probably is expanding that concept of Black sacred music. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, the composer that we were talking about was the organist at St. Mary's. He wrote in the early 1800s a mass for four voices in Latin, and just beautifully done. We used it at the end of an opera that we wrote for the city's 300th birthday. But he would be one of the people that did some really beautiful things.
And
Samuel
also,
Samuel Snayer was his
in
name.
Multimeter, yes. And we've also done concerts, highlighting um, other Creole, Louisiana Creole language music that was written and used at local churches around Louisiana to, as a part of their devotion. With the
Mhm.
Latin Mass, I think the tradition of sacred music, I think that Black musicians at that time tried to find a way to channel what they knew through the music that they were hearing and the style of the music that they were hearing. And that's
Right.
a valid Black Catholic tradition,
Yeah.
just as much as the gospel music that you hear more today. We did a series of concerts every year at St. Louis Cathedral for Christmas. And a concept that I came up with was a living rosary. So we each went through and sang the different parts of the rosary, but either in Louisiana Creole, or we sang different forms of the Ave Maria by different composers.
Yeah.
Um, and then at the end, we ended with a Nunc Dimittis by a Black composer. And so it was to show, and we all stood in the order of the rosary and moved through,
Yeah.
like you would
Yeah.
through a spoken living rosary, so that it illustrated, what it is that we are and what we are about and what the rosary represents.
And one of the favorite things from that concert called the Creole Christmas, we did a Haitian Noel in the Haitian Creole language, um, and it's wonderful and so much fun. Uses a drum and all of that. Yeah.
Incredible. They let you play drums in St. Louis Cathedral?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I've been there many times. I don't think I've ever seen drums in there.
Yeah.
So one of the main things I wanted to ask you both about, of course, is this the rediscovery of this very important opera from a Creole composer. Could you tell me about Edmond Dédé and the rediscovery of his opera after so many years?
Well, Edmund was born here in New Orleans in 1827, born free because his parents had come in from Haiti at a time when our government said if you come in as a free person, you remain a free person. Well, I think he was a fourth generation free
Hmm.
man of color. And his father was a band musician, and so he began to learn music from his father. And then one of the Italian conductors at the St. Charles Theater, Gabici was his name, took him under his wing. So started with the clarinet with his father and then moved to violin. And he published his first classical vocal piece in New Orleans in 1852. He then had the opportunity to go to Paris to study, but didn't have the money, so he took the chance to go down to Mexico and work in a cigar factory to get enough money to get to Paris. But at that time in the 1850s, they were kicking out free people of color. They thought they had too many who were too powerful, and if you left the state, you couldn't get back. So he had to change his name to get back to New Orleans. And then the free community rallied around him and helped him get the rest of the money. And he went on to Paris and studied the Paris Conservatory. He was hired by Opera Bordeaux, and he conducted his own orchestra in Bordeaux. He lived most of his life there. Um, he wrote hundreds of works and several operatic musical style pieces,
Oratorio, art song.
oratorio, orchestral. He wrote everything.
Hmm.
Um, and but this particular piece Morgiane that he wrote in 1887 was supposed to be put on by Opera Bordeaux, but the administration changed hands and the relationship he had was lost. He went to Paris. He tried to get Paris Opera to take it on. They didn't take it on. So he died thinking it would never get performed. And it's set
Or published.
or published. It didn't get to go through edits, anything. So it's 2 volumes handwritten, 550 pages worth of opera, full orchestra in French. It's set in a Paris suburb. A collector got a hold of it, and it's set there for almost 100 years. Um, by the time the family had collected 10,000 scores, they contacted Harvard and asked Harvard if they would buy them. And Harvard went to Paris and bought them. And this one archivist saw Dédé's manuscript and decided we need to digitize this. They did, and they sent the digital form to Xavier, and that's how we got
So
it. So it's long.
Yes, Lester Sullivan, the archivist. We were actually there meeting with him about something else. We were actually talking to him about my senior thesis from Catholic University because it was about the Black Catholic movement in the 50s and 60s. And he was saying that he might want to put it in the archives. And while we were discussing that, he said, "Oh, I have something else for you all." And he
Yeah,
pulls out this manuscript, which I think both of us were just,
yeah,
jaws dropped, did not know what to do with it, but knew that it was something monumental had landed in our
if,
hands.
if it were not for that one archivist at Harvard, it might still be sitting in a drawer. I mean, so
Hmm.
by the time we did the first performance, it was 138 years after he wrote it.
So I have so many questions, and I warned y'all I had a lot of questions. But so this opera was never performed during his life.
No, never.
That is almost unbelievable that he could put all this work into this and never actually see it on stage.
No.
You have to wonder if, as musicians do, his wife was a soprano. Did he have his wife workshopping some of the music with him? Did he have voices in mind that he was writing for, that he hoped to
Yeah.
get to see it on stage? Was, what was actually on its feet during his lifetime? Did he even hear any of it sung?
Right.
the,
Right.
the
We don't
questions
even
are
know.
just, you could
Yeah.
write a book just of the questions you have of what went into uh,
Yeah.
composing and orchestrating this.
Yeah.
And you said Harvard were the ones that bought it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Did they know that it had never been performed?
I'm not really sure, but but because it was still in handwritten form, they probably imagined it hadn't.
I
But
don't
I
know
don't
whether
know.
if they ever researched whether it was ever published at any time, because of course
Yeah,
the Library of Congress and other repositories have manuscripts of Beethoven.
yeah,
They have their handwritten things as well, which I
yeah,
was fortunate enough to see when I was up there. Though those works got published, so maybe
yeah.
I don't know if they did the research to find out whether he
I
had
know that
ever
she
endeavored to
did
have
do
it
some.
published or not.
Yeah, I know she did some digging. I don't know if it was more towards finding out more about Edmond Dédé,
Hmm.
or if she, I don't know for sure.
And when you guys saw it, did you immediately know that what it was and that it had not been performed?
Once I got it on a seat, burned on the CD disc, when people used to do that. I knew of his music and never knew about that, so I started doing my own digging too, and finally found out that no, it hadn't been performed. The only thing that eventually got performed before we did it was the overture, and that was Richard Rosenberg at Hot Springs Orchestra. He recorded. Well, he didn't record it, but he performed it, and he sent me the tape that they did of it, and so that was the first I heard.
When was that from?
I lose track. Maybe 2005 or so
Or
that he did it,
2006.
but he didn't record it. They just performed it and didn't record it. So, but that was the first of it that I heard.
When I saw the manuscript and I saw not only treble clef, bass clef, but I saw alto clef, C clef, things that aren't typically used, I knew, oh, we are looking at something that is going to, you know, this could take over your life. This could be a 20-year odyssey of getting something
Yes,
performed. But
indeed.
wow,
Yeah,
what a journey. And the historian in me was just excited, to
yeah,
see something in someone's handwriting and to try to unpack all the context and nuances around it,
yeah,
just to translate the language to figure out what the plot was, putting aside the musical aspect of it. I knew that what we had was going to be something spectacular. It just was a question of how do we get to the spectacle part of the spectacular.
right. Because the first thing was all of those handwritten notes needed to be put into a computer, aligned with the words, and come up with modern sheet music. And I spent 12 years begging for people to help fund it, trying to find, a lot of grants are programming related, not the set up work, because people had not heard of it or they had no idea what the outcome would be. I couldn't get anybody to invest.
Or hadn't
So
really
that
even heard of him.
was a long struggle. Yeah.
So, when was this piece made known to you both of you?
So that would have been around 2012 or so.
Mhm.
And I think my last question about this little rediscovery process: how did it end up at Xavier?
From Harvard, or Harvard sent it.
Just because?
Because,
Xavier has had a very long history of performing classical music and opera with their music department,
yeah,
and particularly starting in the 30s and 40s with one of the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament who was running the department. They staged whole operas, they staged whole works, they turned out great musical talent. And I think that being known, especially it also being a historically Black Catholic university, maybe they thought
absolutely.
his last name is Dédé. This is coming from
Right. From
France.
New
It's New
Orleans.
Orleans. Let's do the
Yeah,
synergistic thing and send that
yeah,
on to Xavier.
yeah.
And maybe
And my
I'm
guess
sure they
that
also had a relationship with Dr. Sullivan
that's,
as well.
that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Day lived in New Orleans before he went to France. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. He was born here. He lived here. I think he left sometime in the 1850s.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
He
he
grew up
had a
in.
brother.
Hmm.
The brother stayed behind, and so descendants of the brother are on our board.
And went
So
to
we have,
school with me.
yeah, so we have Dédé family connection. Yeah,
Hmm.
Incredible. You know, when I first saw this story, I remembered immediately where I first heard of him. There's a wonderful book called Economy Hall, The Hidden History of a Free Black Brotherhood by Fatima Sheikh, who is
yes,
from
we love
New
Fatima.
Orleans.
We love
And
Fatima.
part of the, I'm glad to hear it. I remember one of the, just a little side note in the book was that someone was listening to music by Edmond Dédé in just one of these little uh, narratives, mini narratives in the book.
Yeah,
And that was the first I'd ever heard of him. I looked him up. I was like, oh, incredible. And
yeah,
then I never thought about him again for like 5 years. And then this story pops up, and I was like, wow,
yeah,
there he
yeah,
is.
yeah. Oh, and when I was telling you about the date, we had started off thinking we would do it for his birthday, which was in
Mm,
November.
yes.
But the Historic New Orleans collection wanted to move to January. And so at first I was, I wanted to do it for his birthday, and I was kind of upset. And I was like, well, my faith being what it is, I said, there's got to be a reason that we're moving to January. So they said January 23rd. That's the date they wanted. Turns out he was baptized in the cathedral on January 20th. So it was a real homecoming to bring his music back to where he was baptized.
Absolutely.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
it it truly is, but sometimes that's how God works, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how did
So,
that premiere go? What was that like?
oh my goodness. Well, of all the weird things, we got a major snowstorm. A major snowstorm hit the city, on the 21st or somewhere like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
I am 69 years old. I've never in New Orleans seen this kind of snow. Came down, it stayed, normally it gets
I
hot
had
and it melts.
16 inches of snow in my backyard.
16 inches, yeah.
16.
And yeah. And so we were like, oh, what in the world should we do? So we moved it by one day.
Hmm.
And I mean the city was shut down. We're not, used to this kind of thing. So we had no idea what would happen. Do you know that cathedral was packed with people standing
In
lining the
line.
wall?
Yes.
They they were not to miss that. That was just so incredible.
And
His
for
his New
me,
Orleans family was there, yes,
hmm,
and it was totally incredible. I'll send you some pictures.
and it was a homecoming for me as well because I had been a cantor and a section leader in the cathedral um, until about 2010. And so I had, we'd been going back to do our concerts, but to do something monumental like this in a place where I had, helped assist with the mass and dedicating the baptismal chapel to Aria um, along with now Archbishop Fobb, who married my husband and I and baptized our daughter. It was all
Yeah,
it
all good
all of
stuff.
the ancestors. It could just feel them all
All of
around
it.
us. It was a very proud moment and a very humbling moment for me
Yeah,
to feel like we were returning something not only to Dede but to our community as well.
yes. And the fact that we had the support of the French consulate for the translations, and uh, I didn't mention another New Orleans person became very instrumental, Patrick Quigley, who is now artistic director of Washington, D.C. based Opera Lafayette. When he came along, he already had someone that does transcriptions for them. So we spent almost 2 years working on that. And then he came down and conducted it. And then we went with Opera Lafayette with their orchestra in DC, New York, and recorded at the University of Maryland.
And the
So he
final
was
French translations were done by me.
yeah, super. Yeah.
The Super Turtles,
A
yes.
lot of a lot of different things had to come together in
A
order for this
lot of
to.
different things. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And Patrick and I didn't know each other either. So he's born in New Orleans and went to Jesuit high school. We didn't know each other. And a singer that we knew in common said to him, "You need to talk to Givonna Joseph." And that's how simply how we got connected. So crazy, but I
So
think divinely appointed.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So after the premiere in New Orleans, my understanding is that it kind of went on a little mini tour of sorts. Is that right?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Was at Lincoln Center, I mean,
The Lincoln
the
Theater
historic
on
Lincoln Theater
on
in Washington
on U
D.C.
Street in Washington, D.C. Yes.
Yeah, was the full premiere. And Edmond Dédé's great great grandson, who still lives in France, he came for it. So that was really big. Yeah, yeah.
And then from
And
there,
then
we went to Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York and did a performance there, and then came back to University of Maryland at the Clarice Smith Center, and that's where the live recording was done, which is what you hear
Okay,
today. Yeah.
that was my last question. So
yeah.
who were the principal voices in the recording?
Oh, some of
Woo.
the best people in the world, not only singers, but just the best people in the world. Mary Elizabeth Williams sings the role of Morgiane. Um, Nicole Cabell sings the role of her daughter, Amin. Chauncey Packer is Amin's fiance, Ali. And Kenneth Kellogg, who sang Malcolm X, and I mean, he's initiated many roles, sings the role of the Sultan of Persia. Haji Hassan is an Arabian man who marries Morjan, and um, that's Joshua Conyers. And Jonathan Woody, he's the one that introduced Patrick and me. And we had our own people who had small roles, Valencia Pleasant, Taylor J. White, and Tony Domino, the grandson of Fats Domino, is an operatic tenor, and so he had a role. And we brought 16 singers from New Orleans up to all of the states, and it was a wonderful experience.
Yes.
Having heard these different cast members' names and who they were, this is a good time to ask, what is Morgiane about?
There you go. Okay. So when you asking, could we play drums in the Catholic Church? I went to Father Pat, who's
The rector.
I don't know what, I don't,
He's the
the
rector.
director of the cathedral,
The
the
rector.
rector of the rector. Yes, I got it, of the cathedral. And I went to him and I said, "Now listen, this opera takes place in Arabia and Persia. The first person that sings is a Muslim. At some point, he calls upon Allah. I just want to be sure that I won't get struck down by lightning if I bring this production into the cathedral." So, but it's an interesting story. It's he took it from the Allah Baba and the 40 Thieves kind of story. But in that, there are enslaved characters. He changes, and so the characters actually fighting against subjugation. Morjan is the mother who was married to the Sultan of Persia, but he was an abusive, jealous kind of person, and she decides to escape him, to take her own power back and escape him. That was after their baby was born. So she escapes, and Haji finds her and takes her to Arabia, where they live, and the girl has no idea of her connection to the Sultan. Okay. So on her wedding day, the Sultan sends the henchman to kidnap the girl because he had heard of her beauty and he wanted her for his harem. So he kidnaps her, and instead of Haji and Morjan saying, "Oh well, we should be honored that the Sultan wants her," which people were supposed to do at that time, they said, "Oh no, oh no, and we got to go to Persia and get her." So they go. Isfahan was Persia, now modern day Iran. So they go there to get her, and of course he puts them in jail, and they're fearful for their life. And Morjan says, "Oh, I know what I need to say that will save our lives and get us out of the situation. So she reveals to the Sultan in the end, the person you kidnapped is your daughter.
I'm your old wife. I'd run away
I'm
from
your
you.
old wife, and you
I
just
ran away from
kidnapped your
you.
daughter.
I ran away from you because your
And
situation is
literally,
crummy, and this is your child.
yeah, and literally in 1887, he puts in a Maury Povich kind of, they say, you are the father, you are the father. I am the father. So it ends with everybody. And of course, Haji knew none of this. Morgiane kept the story to herself. And so he says, I'm so confused. It's funny. But and Amin also stands up against the Sultan, not knowing it's her father, but she says, I'm not going to be your subject. I'm
Mhm.
not going in your harem. You can just go ahead and kill me. So here are these two women fighting against the powers that be. And I love that he used opera and classical music when he could to make these kind of statements. So for me, that was like, yes, yes, indeed. Especially in today's time, it was perfect. It was just perfect.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
think
as you tell that
I should
narrative,
write a Gen Z summary of this, where we talk about the Sultan got chopped, and Amin and Morgiane were clocking for him and clocked his tea, and so boom, I have to do a Megan the Stallion recap of this. I got to think about this in my mind.
period.
Period. Periods.
Yeah. So it's a great
So
story, but the music is lush and beautiful,
Gorgeous.
and it's French grand opera, but it's like New Orleans. It's like a combination of all of the things he would have heard in New Orleans. There's some suggestion that part of it has a little precursor to jazz in it.
Mhm.
But it's just wonderful, wonderful music. The only thing that we did not get to record was the ballet, and so hopefully we'll do that because it makes it. The ballet would have made it 3.5 hours long, and budget wise, that would have been tough. But yeah, we love the music.
so when you say that you hear New Orleans in it, in my head as you're telling that narrative, I'm thinking it's not just a commentary on slavery with him transforming the characters of another story into these free people, but it seems like he also maybe is commenting on the plissage system that he knew of in New
Mm.
Orleans.
Oh yeah, right. I hadn't thought
Absolutely.
about that. Yes, indeed. Yes,
Absolutely.
indeed.
So it's like
He's
a protest opera.
Hmm.
uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe, I'm sure that he probably had a lot of feelings around that because it had to become more complex for him as he went to France and married a French woman and had children who, if they had, and grandchildren and so on, if they had not known the connection, would not know that they had any black ancestry. And that had to factor in as well. What is, you know, for maybe unconsciously, but we know that plissage was not this cut and dry thing that they try to make it out to be, this antebellum thing that only happened for it. It was still going on well into the 20th century. Um,
Readers, can you explain what plissage is? Especially since I didn't put Henriette up here like I could have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Henriette was one of the first to fight against this whole plissage system in deciding to become a nun and devote her life to Christ. But I think it means placed. So because a lot of white settlers in this Louisiana territory didn't come with wives, they began to make arrangements, and later it became sort of a legal backhanded arrangement with a person of African descent or Native American descent that he would provide her a house, and any children that they would produce would be free. And
and their
so there were women
educations
who
would be
were
provided for, and
education
and
would be
perhaps
provided for.
homes would be purchased for them. Sometimes they had homes next
Right,
door to the person that they were in relationship with. They called it le mariage à main gauche, which means a
right.
left-handed marriage.
Like a left,
Yes, because when you
left-handed
marry
marriage.
in the
Yeah,
church, you join your right hands together as a part of the sacrament of marriage. So it's the idea of it's a partnership, an informal one, but there are binding ties and expectations of you as a white man entering into this. For the women, of course, it had much more nuance and color about what the reality of their lives was it going to be. Was it going to be a lifetime partnership? Was it going to be until he decided that he needed to marry a white woman and produce heirs there? Would there be legal protections for you within his death? What happened? There were a lot of open-ended pieces to what that could mean for someone's life in our community.
Yeah.
And as we know, that has repercussions, and there are repercussions still happening today as a result of it.
Yeah. And in my ancestry, there were things that happened, and the good part of it was that property got passed down, and there was, some wealth acquired. But then when we got to Jim Crow, they came up with systems to get rid of all of the property. They lost all their property. They were kicked out of the French Quarter. And so by the time it got to my grandmother, they were dirt poor. It was gone. Uh-oh, we lost Aria. She'll come back. So yeah, the good side of it is that there were, many of our people were educated, and we got scientists and doctors and engineers and all kinds of people out of it. But the idea that the women had no real control of their lives, and in some cases, I think what happened with Henriette's sister, she was a place. When her husband died, his family decided they weren't going to honor any of it, and kicked her out of her house with her child. So it was a very scary existence in a lot of ways. Yeah. So Dédé's great great grandson, who lives in Alsace, Lorraine, part of France, when he came down, he gave a speech, and he's very very light skinned. His face shape is just like Dédé. The hair is still curly, was very light skinned, and he says, "I don't know, but somewhere along the way, I lost my melanin."
It happens to the best of us, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man. That's so wonderful that his descendants got to be able to see it though.
yeah, yeah. And when we performed in Paris in 2024, he came with his uncle and his mom, and so they have really been happy that we've been doing this work.
I'm assuming they didn't know anything about it before.
I think they knew more than the American people did. They knew more because his son also became a classical composer. And so so they come through the son. So they knew more than the American people. It got lost in America. Actually, one of my two board members, their father was on a streetcar, and there was a pamphlet on the streetcar, and somehow today was mentioned in the pamphlet, and that was first time he learned about it. No idea. So,
It has a way of erasing certain histories.
oh yeah, oh, yeah, and we are fighting and determined that it won't be lost anymore. Won't be lost anymore. Yeah. I was speaking at the Christian Brothers School, which is a Catholic school here, yesterday, and was sharing with them some of the people in our history and the composers in our history. And I said, we had lots of influential people that went to the opera. And I said, and even the voodoo queen, Marie Laveau, we believe she went to the opera. And I said, and I'm her great 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 niece. So be afraid. And they were all like, ooh.
My goodness.
But anyway, yeah. And that's also interesting, the intersection between voodoo and Catholicism, which she managed to cultivate.
You mean our auntie?
Yeah,
I think
Did you
I,
know
I visited her grave on the same day I saw Venerable Henriette's grave. Are they in the same cemetery? Am I right?
that Marie is in St. Louis number one,
1. Yeah,
Mother
she's
Henriette
the
is in St. Louis, number 2. So they're only
Okay,
a couple
yeah.
of blocks apart.
I think I
yeah,
went on a
But
tour that took us around to some of them.
they
yeah,
are also cousins. Mother Henriette's grandmother was the half sister of Marie's dad.
Huh. I don't think
yeah.
I knew that.
So here you have a saint and a voodoo queen
Listen,
out of the same
that's the
family.
joke. We all cousins. We all trying to figure out how we're related. My best friend and I keep trying to figure out how we're related. So
Creole cousins.
we all cousins.
Y'all probably related to the Pope too, huh?
That's the joke.
Everybody's
That's the
asking.
joke. Everybody trying to
No
claim the
telling.
Pope now.
No telling.
Digging into
Yeah.
their family tree like never before.
Uh-huh. But when I saw his name, when they first Abemus Papa and he came out and they said his name, my little antenna went. And then I looked at him and I was like, you have to start figuring some things out. And one of our board members, Jari Honore, is the one who
Yeah, he's one
made
of our
the
board
made the
members.
historic discovery. Very
Yeah.
proud of him.
But the funniest thing, and I was looking at him, and I said, he looks familiar. Why does he look familiar? And she said, he looked just like those 7 more men up in church. That's why. So we had no, as before we knew anything.
Look like he should be playing dominoes outside the autocrat. That's exactly what he looked like.
I
Oh
can't say
boy.
that I knew, but once it came out, I said, he does have a little tint.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So
indeed.
anyway,
Learn
so
real quickly,
tonight we're
Nate, that
doing
she's the polite one and I'm the one with the behavior. I'm the one you want to make mad because I'll just cuss you out up front. You don't want to make her mad because it's gonna take her a while. I'm the one that's in your face, and she's the lady.
So y'all make a good duo then.
We do most
yeah,
of the time. The great thing is we're very much alike. The
yeah.
Mm.
terrible thing is we're
We're
very
very
much
similar.
alike.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's certainly produced incredible things with Opera Creole. I mean, where would Morgiane be today without you
right.
two putting in the work, along with, of course, all your collaborators?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
we're very
Thank
grateful for
you.
it.
Thank you. We've been very blessed.
Tonight at Xavier, we're doing a CD release event, not only to celebrate the opera and, get people CDs, but to also highlight and celebrate the history of Xavier in opera. Thank you so much to Sister Elise,
Mhm.
that in the 1934, Black folks were not allowed to even go to operas that were touring the city. They weren't allowed to go. And so she started this program, and they put on major productions, and major singers came out of Xavier, great international singers. So it's a wonderful history. We're celebrating that.
Can you tell me, what's Sister Elisa's full name?
Sisson, Sisson. Yeah, Elise Sisson.
Certainly want to add information on that
Mhm.
Yeah,
to the notes here.
yeah.
So you mentioned one thing about the future of Morgiane, that you hope to be able to perform the whole thing with the ballet portion in the future. What else might be in the future with what you guys can do with Morgiane?
Well, his 200th birthday is next November, the 2027. So that's my goal, to do this whole thing for his 200th birthday. Um, and I'll be in Boston next month doing something related, a presentation at the French Library in Boston. We have documentaries. One's come out already. There's another documentary coming out. So it's a lot of things coming up, and so we're excited about that. And we're also working on another son of New Orleans, Lucien Lambert, if you want to say in English. His father, Charles, was a free composer of color, and Lucien was born in France. And in 1897, he won a competition, a citywide competition in Paris. And his opera was presented at l'Opéra Comique as the prize. He won it. Um, and it's set in Senegal, but it never made its way to America. So we're working on that one next.
But yes, but to go back to Morgiane for a second, we had with our production last year, it wasn't fully staged. There wasn't
Right,
stage blocking. They were in costume, but in terms of, action sets, all of those things were not
right.
available to us as this for our initial production. So what I look to do from my side, from the design and production side, is I have been researching, 18th century Persia, now Iran, and where the opera is set in mostly. Isfahan was a major cultural center at that time of Persia and was the capital. And so, how to learn more about its architecture and culture and finding ways to incorporate that into any production that we would do would be, a great challenge, because all of that would have to be built and designed and constructed for whatever venue we used. So it would be a great undertaking, but I would want to make sure that I'm working with Black and Brown students here locally, bring them on as production interns, pass the knowledge on. I think that that's a crucial piece of what we want to do as well. It's not just about honoring the legacy, but also how do we keep moving forward so that it's not as necessary for an opera creole to exist in 50 years, in 100 years, that it is standard, it
Part
is
of part
canon,
of the canon, as they
part
say.
of the canon of what is known of opera and classical music and what is known of Black music.
And one of the cool things that we did learn in terms of when we were trying to figure out the costumes is that Arabia had a great interchange with Ethiopia.
Hmm.
Uh, so some of those areas were not as racially separated as
They
we
were
imagine.
considered one. They were considered one racial classification. This idea
Yeah,
of Western Asia, uh, of Persia and the Holy Land and Arabia and all of that being considered
right.
Western Asia did not really exist at that time. It really was considered more Eastern Africa. And so that cultural, we even see that in the life of Christ, right? Christ goes to Egypt and spends a lot of his childhood in Egypt and then returns. There was a real cultural exchange there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we
Also
wanted
helped
to
by
see
the silk and spices
more of
trade
that.
and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not considered as stratified as it has become in today's time.
That's fascinating. I guess now I can, now that you've said it, I can see that, with North Africa kind of having this connection with, in North Africa and the Middle East having a connection with Ethiopia. But yeah, historically, I would have never guessed.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I try to tell people about is we're not just, oh, let's find some music and we're gonna put it on. We do a deep dive. We want to know why the composer wrote something in that era. What
Hmm.
is the history of the era? What how to be respectful in costumes and what we say about the era, and we're not gonna do stereotypical TV Persian, things like that. We really we do a lot of work to put things on its feet in the proper
Absolutely.
way.
Even in terms of the French, for the super titles, since I can speak to that, what I wanted to do was honor the 19th century Romantic French that it was originally written in, and find a way to make that translatable into 21st century English, but still honored the cadence uh, and the theme of the time, so that you got the context in which it was written in. You heard the melodiousness of the language, or could see it in the super titles in this case. But also, I put a little New Orleans flavor in there. I put a little bit of something so that our audience would know we wrote this. This is coming through our lens. We want you to experience it through our lens, and that was a little, that took a little bit of time to exactly to work it out, but it's definitely reflected in the text.
Man, I cannot tell you how incredible the work you guys are doing is, both for, you know, our audience with BCM, I know they're going to love this, that because there's so much restriction in what people think of when they think of America, American music, Black music. We talked about it a little bit earlier. And even for me, as someone who's not that much into classical music, I'm like, but it's so important that we tell the truth
Yeah.
about our history, about who our people are, about what our people have accomplished and created. Um, I love it.
And
So,
I will
yeah, go ahead.
also add that, when Dédé was baptized in the cathedral, January 20th, 1828, that was a time when the cathedral, even though we all went there, it was segregated. So all of the people of African descent would be up in those balconies. That's where they had to stand for mass. And white folks were down at the bottom. But here we bring him back home for this performance, January 24th, 2025, and everybody is there mixed together, all races, all people crying, all people happy, all people blown away. And so that part of from a spiritual perspective, that really struck me. It really struck me. And so there was the cathedral being as it should have always been, you know.
And as
Yeah.
Dede surely prayed for on many
Yeah.
occasions.
Yes.
And his mother. We don't know as much about his mother or her life, but
Yeah.
so much of the research that has gone into 18th and 19th century New Orleans talks about how enslaved women and free women of color are the ones that kept the Catholic Church alive. They kept the Catholic Church thriving with their work as instructors in catechism, with catechumens, with volunteering, with their presence at Mass. We were always the ones the most present for weekly attendance at Mass and as daily communicants, keeping the life of the church thriving. And there are some arguments that it would not have survived without our women, without the women of our community. And so I think about her. I think about the women that she must have been in community with, and her mothers and grandmothers. We can't leave them out of the
Mhm.
story. Dédé
Yeah.
also had a sister who passed away very early. I hope that this also has brought some comfort, some healing to um, the spiritual life, and it is an acknowledgement of the spiritual life of those women and the work that they did. It's often unsung.
And one of the stories that I like to tell about Black women in the church, and when we say to people, he wrote this opera in French, well, did he speak French? My great grandmother went to Mass, which was in Latin. Whole Mass was in Latin back then. Then, when it came to the homily, the priest gave the homily in French. And so she understood both of those things. She got home, she would say her prayers in Creole, and then she worked for a guy who spoke English only. And so we have been negotiating languages forever,
And her
especially in this
mother-in-law
generation.
was Sicilian.
Right? Her mother-in-law was Sicilian.
And there you have New Orleans.
That's right.
Exactly. And her father was Choctaw, so she knew Choctaw and passed
Oh
that
my
down to
Yeah,
her
goodness.
daughter, who,
yeah.
well, passed it down to me through a Thanksgiving Day protest about the pageant at my school, which is its own story. Mama, you
Isn't
want
it
So this is
right?
why you have to love New Orleans. We are everything and everybody.
everything and
All at
everybody.
once.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, I want to make sure my readers, our listeners rather, are able to find your work. So where can people learn more about Opera Creole?
www.operacreole.org. And on our homepage, you will see we were filmed for 2 days by Cash App. We have a Cash App community 3 minute or so expose. We have a great interview with Michelle Miller on CBS. We've got an NBC interview and more about the day on the homepage. And of course, you can click all through to see what we're up to.
And the
And
most
we're
important
also on
question of all,
Patreon.
perhaps.
We're on Patreon as well. We are on Instagram, and since you mentioned Cash App, our Cash App is OperaCréole.
Yeah. And
If people
Facebook,
feel
of
like they
course.
wanted to contribute to our work.
Yeah.
And
We would
since
love
people
that.
can do this now, where do they buy the recording of Morgiane?
We have it in our store, and also there's a couple of sites. It's pretty much going to be on everything:
We-
Amazon, Barnes and
We're,
Noble,
yes, and we're also
um,
on all
yeah,
streaming platforms for download.
streaming platforms for downloading. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you both so much for sharing your work, sharing Dédé. Um,
Thank you.
incredible stuff. And thank you for coming on to the Black Catholic Messenger Show.
All
Bien,
right.
we're so honored to be here.
Bien, Maisy.
Thank you for tuning in to the Black Catholic Messenger Show, where we keep it black and we keep it Catholic. Black Catholic Messenger is an independent, nonprofit media organization covering stories of interest to African American Catholics. If you like what you've heard on the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform, and please do visit us at blackcatholicmessenger.org to read our stories and make a donation. Thank you.